Thank you, Kyle. Take your Bible, if you would, and turn with me to Matthew's Gospel, chapter 4. We launch into a new series that will take us right up to Christmas. The title of the series is Learning to Be Christian. What's your definition of Christian? If we were to take your definition and apply it to everybody we could, would God be pleased? Now, if we take God's definition and apply it to everyone, obviously God will be pleased. So we want to spend some time in these next weeks looking at what Jesus has prescribed, if you will, as being Christian. Now, you won't find in the text that we're going to use, you can see it's from Matthew chapter 4, verse 23, right to the end of verse 16. You will not find the word learning anywhere in the text. You will not find the word Christian anywhere in the text. But you'll see why this title for this series is so significant. As Jesus is going about, He is impacting the lives of people, and His desire is to bring them into perfect alignment with God's design as reconciliation. Sin destroys. If you don't think it destroys, in John chapter 10, Jesus said, the thief comes to steal and to kill and to destroy. Wow. How many of you want that? Well, one of the ways that we make sure that doesn't occur is we learn to be Christian. Now, not the world's definition, not Pastor Grant's definition, not Baptist definition. We're going to look at what Jesus teaches over these next weeks, and we're going to let you become the learner that Jesus describes. Now, question. How satisfied are you with the learning you are doing now? Rate yourself on a scale of like 1 to 10. 1 is like, I ain't learning nothing. And 10 is like, man, I'm just nailing it. I'm getting this done. I'm growing in leaps and bounds. Now, how satisfied is God with your learning? Do they match? If you're satisfied with your learning, okay. If God is satisfied with your learning, okay. But if God's not satisfied, you got a problem. And if you're not satisfied, I hope it's for the right reasons. But see, here's the truth. Every one of us are learning. We haven't stopped learning. Now, many of you have already had all these wonderful graduations. I didn't have a kindergarten graduation because I didn't go to kindergarten. There was no kindergarten when I was that age where we lived. There might have been in other places. We didn't have it. I graduated not from elementary school. Not an option. My first graduation was 8th grade. Woo, I was excited. Combed my hair real nice. Put on a short sleeve white shirt, some kind of tie, and I was dressed up. Okay, how far did my 8th grade graduation get me? Well, just a few months after 8th grade graduation, here comes 9th grade. And so I graduated from high school. Man, I remember high school graduation was 42 years ago. May 23rd, 1975. Some of you can remember your date as well. That graduation, oh, it's celebrated. And you're an adult now, man, woman, woo! That graduation and where you are now equals what? So you didn't stop learning. And then there came graduation from college. Woo! I crammed 4 years into 4.5. Y'all think about that one for a moment. I graduated in December 1979 from college. I was so excited. I had my formal education behind me. Oh, I was going to have the world by the tail. Right. Then I graduated from seminary, a master's degree. Oh, now that was exciting. I said, man, I'm ready for the world. Look out, world, here I come. I'm thankful for those. But, you know, life's still tough. You and I have discovered, no matter where we have been, no matter the graduations we have achieved, we're still learning. Now, the question is not, are we going to learn? It's, what are we going to learn? Are you learning what God says to learn? Now, I'm having fun learning now. I wish I had the attitude 40 years ago that I have now about learning. My life would be so much different. Because I'm having fun now. I'm enjoying learning. I still need some help. I still go through the same stuff all of you go through. You know, distractions, laziness. I get aggravated. I get weary. I get frustrated. If you say you don't, then quit deceiving yourself. Just own it and we'll work on it together. But here's the thing. If you say you're a follower of Jesus Christ, and you're not learning to be Christian, what are you learning? See, I don't want you to learn to be Baptist first. I don't want you to learn how to be a Central Parkway participant first. I want you to learn how to follow Jesus first. When you follow Jesus, the rest of it takes care of itself. So we're going to spend some time looking at the opening of what is the Sermon on the Mount, what led up to it, and just a capsule, and why we need to be learners who are learning to be Christian. Now, we're going to get that definition. You look at how the world defines it. You look at how the world defines what it is to be learning. And you'll go, I think I'm going to go stick with what God has. So, in Matthew's Gospel, Jesus has been bringing up some things, and he's been getting his public ministry going. And then we find some things that you may just gloss over, but I don't want to gloss over them anymore. I want you to look, and I want you to begin to identify what learning to be Christian is all about. So, read with me, Matthew's Gospel, chapter 4, beginning in verse 23. I'm reading from the Holman Christian Standard Bible. You follow along. Jesus was going all over Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. Then the news about him spread throughout Syria. So they brought to him all those who were afflicted, those suffering from various diseases and intense pains, the demon-possessed, the epileptics, and the paralytics. And he healed them. Large crowds followed him from Galilee, Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and beyond the Jordan. When he saw the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to teach them, saying. I wish I could condense it all and give you right on through verse 16, but we're going to break it down over the next week, so let's just begin looking in verse 23. What in the world was going on? What does this have to do with learning to be Christian? The first thing I want you to see is Jesus was on mission. He wasn't just talking about it. He wasn't delegating and saying, y'all go do it. He was doing mission. He was modeling for you and me how to be Christian. Now, the word hadn't shown up yet. But see, it's a lifestyle. It's the way that you and I choose to live out a relationship with Him. Now, He hasn't discussed in depth yet how to have that relationship with Him. He was just showing us. And many of you can begin to do things. I had friends when I was younger who were like Brother Kyle. They played guitar. They didn't take a lesson. They just began to pick it up and they began to feel. They observed somebody else playing guitar. This was before YouTube, by the way. And now with YouTube, you can pick up a YouTube video, and if you'll watch, you can learn all kinds of stuff. How many of you are thankful for YouTube videos? Okay. Well, Jesus was a living YouTube video. Better than, actually. So what did He do? Excuse me. I want you to notice in verse 23 that Jesus was teaching life basics. I want you to notice that He was going into the synagogues and He was teaching. Now, some of you think, oh, that's just like church. No, it's not. Synagogue was way more than just church. I grew up in a community where churches were the central place to gather. If you wanted to find the leaders of the community, where'd you go? You went to the synagogue. If you wanted to find out what was happening in the community, where'd you go? The synagogue. If you wanted to go get education, where'd you go? You went to the synagogue. If you wanted to get permission for something really big, where'd you go? The synagogue. Now, church took place there as well. But see, the point was Jesus was going where the people gathered and he was teaching. The role of the priest was to teach the people about how to do life as God designed it. What's some of God's basic design for life? Morals. Right from wrong. And sometimes it's best rather than just good. Amen? Now, if every one of us could recognize readily that's evil and this is good, we wouldn't have any issues, would we? No, we need somebody who will teach us right morals. Our parents attempted to do so, at least most of us. I'm so grateful that my mother and father taught good morals. Did I always obey? Are you crazy? They taught me, though. I'm without excuse. So Jesus was teaching more. Jesus was teaching values. See, make the right choice at the right time for the right reason. Because if you don't care for people, then your values are going to be that you care about yourself the most. Well, if you look into what Jesus taught, the values that he taught was love God first, love people as you love your what? Self. So if you don't love yourself, if you don't have a good value of yourself, you need to adjust that. You need to bring it into a place where it's actually accomplishing what God intends in just the basics of life. People are important. And then there's character. Oh, now some of we're good at character. Character is, you ought to. Is that the way Jesus did it? No. Jesus said, listen, I want to show you where you are. In God's economy, in God's design, here's where you are. Now, don't be mistaken and don't be naive. Jesus used the Old Testament. And the Old Testament is filled with occasions where God said, here's what I want you to do. But you didn't. You wouldn't. You rebelled. And like what I shared with us in our season of worship through prayer, that verse in Hosea 10:12, God extends an invitation in it. So here's what Jesus does. He says, here's where you are, and I want to help you get where you're supposed to be. That's dealing with our character. Every one of us need to grow in our character. Are you done growing in your character? Are you as complete in your character as you're ever going to be? I hope not. Now, I hope you're a long way. I hope you're mature like a big tree. But you ought not be done growing, because if you're done growing, you're dead. Now, I don't want you to be dead. Now, see, a whole lot of people, in the midst of where they were going, they wanted the basics of life, and God gave something that we know as the Ten Commandments that are the basics of life. When you look at the first four, they're about how to have a relationship with God. You look at the last six, and they're how to do relationship with each other, so that we're getting the basics right. We're growing, and we're having an awesome time living life. Are you having fun living your life? That was not a rhetorical question. I want you to ask you, am I having fun living my life? If you're not having fun living your life, what's wrong? Why aren't you? Oh, my life's so draining. It's so demanding. It's so tiring. I don't have I can help you with that. I want to point you to somebody who wants you. I shared with you the first part of John 10:10 earlier. You know the second part of it, don't you? I've come that they, my sheep, may have life and have it how? Abundantly! Golden Corral did not think up buffet. Neither did Shoney's, if you're that old. See, Jesus said, so he's coming and teaching life basics. Then I want you to notice also in verse 23, he's doing something else. He's on mission. What's he doing? He's preaching the good news of the kingdom. Whoa! His mission was not just to tell you how to live life while you're here on earth. There's a greater kingdom. Life here on earth is temporary. You and I don't know when we're going to enter into eternity and be gone from this life. Psalm 139 verse 16 says that God has written down every one of our days before we live the first one. Isn't that awesome? God has a plan. So I don't want to hasten it. I want to live it right up to the very last nanosecond and say, God, I used it up. But in the midst of all that, what's the kingdom about? The kingdom is about our God. The kingdom is about a God who is awesome, a God who is eternal, a God who is holy, a God who is righteous. He is my peace. He is my life. He is my salvation. He is my joy. Who is God to you? If He's not who the God of the Bible is, you've got the wrong God. If you're not discerning all of the character of Him, and by the way, it'll take you all of your life to learn, and then you'll get to heaven and go, wow, there's more. But see, it's that kingdom that God planned that sin messed up. And the only way we get to partake in that kingdom is through the good news of the kingdom. What's the good news of the kingdom? Glad you asked. You and I are sinners. We've earned spiritual death, separation from God. But the good news is God knows that's not how He wants to leave us. He loves us too much to leave us there, so He provided for us a means of overcoming that separation. Jesus Christ, who gave His life as the once-for-all sacrifice, so that if we confess that He is Lord and believe in our hearts God raised Him from the dead, we will be saved. We'll be saved from death and given life. That's the good news of the kingdom. You know anybody who says, oh, I don't want to go to heaven? I've been alive for almost 60 years. I've been a Christian for 50 years. I've been pastoring for going on 35 years. I haven't met the first person who was genuine about saying, heaven's just not got enough going on for me. I don't want to go there. Now, I've had many people say, I don't think I'm going to make it. But Jesus was preaching the good news of the kingdom. See, part of the life of learning to be Christian is telling the good news of the kingdom. Whoa! You and I are supposed to be models of life basics like Jesus was. We're supposed to be models of the kingdom like Jesus was. And boy, what a difference! You want to hang out with people who are kingdom-minded, or you want to hang out with people who don't have a clue? Some people going, depends on whose kingdom. I'm not talking about the wannabes. I'm not talking about the faux kingdoms. I'm not talking about the perverted kingdoms. I'm talking about the one that Jesus described in the Revelation, where there are no more tears, where there is no more pain, where there's no need for lights, because Jesus Christ is the light. Whew, man. Yeah, I want to hang out with those folks. But that's not where the mission stopped. Look at the end of verse 23. What does it say He did? He was teaching them, and then He was preaching the good news of the kingdom. And what else was He doing? He was healing every disease and sickness among the people. He was making lives whole. Have you been healed by the power of the living God? Now, don't you discount what He does. See, if you've been saved, you've been healed by the power of the living God. He has brought spiritual healing to you from the worst disease humanity has ever experienced, ever will, called sin. Some of you go, oh, that's healing? Oh, you bet. Because you couldn't do it apart from Him, could you? You couldn't get it somewhere else, could you? No. He brought healing and made them whole. But is that all He did? No, He did some physical healing too. Long about 1995, I was diagnosed with a second cancer, bladder cancer. Oh man, this ain't no fun, guys. So I went for a test. The doctor said, I'm pretty sure what I'm going to find here, but we just want to make sure. We went through the test, and we got done, got the results of the test, and he said, I didn't find a thing. Whoa! You know how exciting that is? I got healed by the divine word of God. No cancer! Y'all know this little 4-letter word in English called amen? Feel free to use that whenever you like. Now maybe some of you are going, gee, I wish I could have. I'm not saying He healed every physical malady. That's not what I want you to see. I want you to see that the life of Jesus and the mission of Jesus was to make people whole. Sin was the issue across the spectrum. Have any of you had a wound healed? Whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual. Who healed him? Man, I've had some wounds healed. Did y'all notice the quote that was on the screen during the offertory? Forgiveness is not abandoning justice, it's trusting God with it. Max Lucado said that. See, here's it. Has God ever healed you of hurt on the inside? When I was a kid, that little phrase went around, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. What a doggone lie! But here comes Jesus and says, Grant, I know where you hurt. Let me help you with that. And then there's those unmet expectations, and every one of us have had those. Every one of us have been wounded by unmet expectations. You didn't do what you were supposed to. You didn't keep your word the way you said you would. You abandoned me. Jesus comes. He says, I know what you need. I am comfort. I am strength. I am joy. I am peace. He begins to heal. Listen, if we're learning to be Christian, we've got to follow a model that touches the whole of life. We've got to help people with basics of life because people are people. Amen? Aren't you glad for the people who helped you? Here's a thought for you. I'm doing this morning. God, thank you for whoever it was that led my daddy and my mama to Jesus Christ. I don't know who it was. Do you know who it was that led the person to Jesus, that led you to Jesus? You ought to thank God for that. You ought to know that it's complete in the midst of those kinds of things. And you're thinking, wow, Pastor, that is so far off it. Really? When you start looking at the basics of life and you start looking at the mission that we have to learn to be Christian, we've got to deal with people where they are. You look across the state of Florida today and 75% of the population or more is not thinking about what you and I are thinking about. They're going, church? Not for me, baby. See, we've got to follow that model. Now, there's more to it. Not only was Jesus on mission, I want you to see that people responded to him. This is amazing. In verse 24, I want you to see what happened. Wow! People started spreading the news. There's songs out there that start spreading the news. You know. And then there's other people go, hey, did you hear? And then you get these. Is there any of you who has a smartphone and you don't get a single notification? Because if you do, you're weird. I want you to know that. See, most of you have your sports apps and you get the scores, right? Amen. And I got the weather alerts. They come in. Excuse me. I got the notification when Hurricane Nate made landfall last evening. I even get when somebody likes one of my tweets. Oh, it feels so good. I don't worry about that mess. But see, in the midst of all that, people are telling us stuff. And I want you to know that what they were doing is they're declaring the mighty works of God. They say, hey, let me tell you what Jesus said. Let me tell you what he did. Jesus taught me how to deal with my family. Jesus taught me how to be a better person. Jesus healed my wounds. You think people won't listen to that? Oh, you better believe they will. And so people are responding to what transforms their lives. Now, a whole lot of stuff they're hoping will transform their lives. Why do you think we keep getting bombarded with the same old commercials over and over and over again? Because they're hoping it will transform our lives. Now, it may transform them, just not in a healthy way. If I eat enough donuts, it'll transform me, amen? They were declaring. Now, it went all the way to Syria. Do you know how far Syria is from the north of Galilee? Now, as the crow flies, it's not all that far. But if the only mode of transportation you have is your feet, and there is no internet, there is no text messaging way over there, there is no news feed from any of the news sources, it's just word of mouth. It went all the way to Syria. Now, the Old Testament word for Syria in many places is Aram. And that's where we get the root word for the Aramaic language. Aramaic. sword went out a long way. And then I want you to see what was happening after they were declaring the good works of the Lord. People were bringing other people to Jesus. Notice what it says in verse 24. It is very strange in the midst of this. Listen, they were bringing to Him, they brought to Him all those who were afflicted. Did you notice all these descriptors? Now, if they were being described in today's language, with today's knowledge, today's understanding and appreciation, there'd be a list all the way from here to the door. The front door. This was just the way they described everything, because an epileptic fit or a paralytic was viewed, so many different things were just lumped into that category. They brought everybody with every kind of known illness or disruption in their life and said, Jesus wants to make a difference in you. Who have you brought to Jesus of late? Have you even spoken to anybody? Said, hey, I know who can address that in your life. I know who has something that will add value to you. I know somebody who did something for me, and if you'll come with me, I think he might do the same thing for you. See, that's what learning to be Christian includes. We've got to bring others out of what He's done for us. But I want you to notice the last thing. Now, don't over-discount this, but it says they followed. Look at verse 25. Large crowds followed Him from Galilee. They went to Decapolis. That's the 10 cities. And depending on which commentator, it's just 10 very specific cities. But they were all lumped together because of their culture. Then there was Jerusalem. They followed Him in Jerusalem. Then followed Him into Judea. Followed Him beyond the Jordan. They went from the Israel side, and then they went east over Jordan. They went over into the land of Jordan. They went over into Syria whenever He went over there. Wow, it was an amazing thing. Now, for some of them, they were just following the show. No doubt about that. For some of them, they didn't have anything better to do, so it seemed. And so they did that. You're going, I'll go with you. But we don't know who genuinely followed Him. Not our call. But I just want you to know that if you're not where Jesus is being followed by somebody, you might be in the wrong place. You ought to be proclaiming His mighty works. You ought to be bringing people to Him, and then they'll want to choose for themselves. In John chapter 4, Jesus spoke to a woman at the well. Told her everything she had ever done. And she said, whoa, let me go tell everybody. And she went into town and started telling people. And so they came out to see Jesus. And Scripture goes on to say that they said to her, listen, we started believing because of you, but now we believe because of Him. People respond to Jesus Christ. I hope you get to see. I hope you get to experience. I hope you get to partner with God in His kingdom work so that you get to see people responding to Jesus. And as we're learning, I want you to see in verses 1 and 2 of chapter 5. When He saw the crowds, He went on the mountain and sat down, and His disciples came in. Now, for a teacher to sit down because he's about to teach is very normal. Now, in today's classroom, teacher comes in, they stand up, you better pay attention because they're getting ready to start their lecture or presentation or whatever. But in Jesus' day, when you saw Him sit down, He was getting ready to kick in with some teaching. He'd gone from going around to all the synagogues teaching, and now He's going to teach on the mountain. What's He doing today? May I say to you that Jesus is still on mission? Point number 3. Right here today, 2017, Jesus is still on mission. I went to a training event on Thursday. Did you know that in the greater Orlando area, within 25, I think it's 25 miles, I can go back and look at my notes. I meant to and I failed to, forgive me. But from downtown Orlando, and I think it's not 10-mile radius. Maybe it's 20 miles. Anyway, here was the thing. 13,000 Muslim homes. That's 4 people per home. That's 72,000 people. Now here's something for you to think about. How many people groups are represented in Central Florida? It's astounding that God is bringing the world to Orlando. He's on mission in Orlando. How? Because He's bringing the world to Orlando. And you're here, and I'm here. And He says, I'm still on mission. Now, Pastor, you're kind of stretching a little bit, aren't you? No, I'm not. In John chapter 16, verse 8, the conviction of the Holy Spirit is promised. And what does the Holy Spirit convict of? First, He convicts the world, but what He convicts concerning is sin, and righteousness, and judgment. He was doing it then, He's doing it now. He's still on mission. Has God not spoken to you by the power of the Holy Spirit in all three of those areas in your life? And I assure you that every person around us, in their heart language, with wonderful clarity, He's still speaking to men and women. In the 8 years that I've had the pleasure, joy of serving as your pastor, one of the mighty works of God has been the number of guests from all over the world that have walked through these doors and worshiped with us. All the choices that they have available, and God says, come worship with Central Parkway. And some of those have turned into continuing relationships for me, for many of you. What does God have moving forward? Who do we get to meet? I met a gentleman last Thursday whose name I knew. And I said, brother, we're supposed to be connected. It was a divine appointment because of the work of the Holy Spirit. Not only that, He's still inviting people to us. When He sat down on the mountain, it was an invitation for the disciples to draw near. And when Jesus comes near you and He makes His presence known and He says, I'm about to do something, then it's an invitation for you to be His disciple. Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. It's also recorded in Mark 8 and in Luke 9. If anyone will be my disciple, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Wow. So what's the invitation to? I want you to see these three things with simplicity, with power, and with clarity. The first thing is the invitation that Jesus extends for us to be His disciples, the learner. The word disciple literally means learner. You and I have not stopped learning. The question is, what are we choosing to learn? What are we intentional in learning? How are we patterning our lives as learners? We get to choose. So if someone says to you, just I'm a Christian, you have the right, in my opinion, to say, well, what are you learning? What's Jesus teaching you? Because just wearing the label doesn't mean a thing. I have been promised an Orlando Magic shirt in my size. And I tend to wear it at least once. Because I'm a quasi-fan. No offense intended. So in the midst of that, if I put on that Orlando Magic shirt and I walk into the Amway, and by some miracle I get to stand on the floor, is anybody going to mistake me as a member of the team? It's okay to say, no, Pastor. No. Just putting on, even if it was a game jersey, a short, and those beautiful basketball sneakers that cost more money than I care to acknowledge. And I put those on. Even if I got a basketball and started dribbling, say, hey guys, would anybody be deceived? Thinking for even a nanosecond, Pastor Grant's the newest member of the Orlando Magic. They wonder, what did Pastor Grant do to get this? When's the sideshow going to be ended? See, just putting on a t-shirt, putting on a label, putting on Christian sunglasses, putting on Christian music, bringing a Christian book in your hands, being able to quote from a Christian book, doesn't make you a disciple. Being a learner of Jesus Himself makes you a disciple. Number two, little Christ. The first time followers of Jesus were referenced as Christian was in Acts chapter 11, verse 24 in Antioch. And it was intended to be a term of great derision. Oh, y'all are trying to be like because Jesus was not beloved. Jesus was not a figure that was a model to be pursued. He had just been crucified as a criminal. So you're just like a criminal. And they wore that name as a badge of honor. If you see Jesus in me, hallelujah. May I say to you, if you can't see Jesus in me, you've got a problem, and I've got a problem. I don't want you to see me. I want you to see Jesus. I want to be such a disciple that they say, well, you're just like Jesus. Yes. That's what I want. Learn little Christ and lifelong. Wouldn't it be crazy if our salvation had an expiration date on it? We're just going to stop learning of Jesus right now. Have you read Isaiah's account in Isaiah chapter 9 or John's account in the Revelation of what they experienced when they stood before the Lord? Actually, it's Isaiah chapter 6, excuse me. So here they are before the Lord. They lift up and they see God on His throne, and they immediately begin to fall. And then it says they just begin to worship. See, their lives are transformed. Even in heaven, we who are the redeemed are being transformed more and more and more into what God's original design is. So it's lifelong. I'm glad that having become a Christian when I was 9 years old, it's endured for 50 years, and as long as I'm on the earth, it's going to endure, and I'm guaranteed that it's going to endure right on through heaven. Not because of who I am, but because of who He is. If you're not a lifelong learner, something's wrong. If you're not having fun being a follower of Jesus and a learner of Jesus because of who He is, something's wrong. If you need some help with that, let me know. Does that mean, oh, Pastor, are you telling us you don't have any struggles? You don't have any problems? Would you look closely at this and rest assured, I have all human traits and tendencies. I just happen to have a Redeemer that I know well, and I'm getting to know Him still better. I'm grateful for that. And finally, I want you to know, because Jesus is still on mission, people are still responding. See, on this day, we're going to look, when we look through the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes in particular, and we see that Jesus Christ, people responded to that on that day, right after He spoke it, just like you've been responding already, going, wow, man, there's something in here that God's stirring in me. I'm going to have to respond to this. Hallelujah. It's God at work in you. So I want you to see that every one of us are going to encounter Jesus. Now, not everybody's going to encounter Jesus at church because they're not at church. Aren't you glad that the heavens declare the glory of God? Aren't you glad that when you look out, somebody sees the moon? Oh, wasn't the harvest moon beautiful this past week? If you didn't look at it, you missed. Go look up pictures of the most recent harvest moon. You go, man, I wish I'd seen that. And if you need some miracles, if you want to see God at work, come in my office. I've got some pictures up now of my newest grandchild. Oh, he is something special. As a matter of fact, next month, I'm still here. Jesus had to come back. I get to see him again, along with the other 2 grandchildren and their mom. My son will have to stay and pay the bills. See, everybody going to encounter Jesus. Where are you going to encounter Jesus? Well, where are you going to be on Monday? Jesus is already there. Where are you going to be on Tuesday? Jesus is already there. Where are you going to be on Wednesday? Jesus is already there. He's in front of you. He's beside you. He's behind you. He's above you. He's below you. Because He's going to encounter you. And when He encounters you, it's going to lead to the second point. You're going to decide concerning Jesus Christ. See, Jesus doesn't just show up and go. He's not playing a mime. He's not a squirrel hoping that you won't see Him because He's being still and He don't want to run back some other direction. No, Jesus is coming looking for a response from you. Jesus is calling you to learn to be Christian. Jesus is calling you to see the example that He is of mission. Basics of life. Coming in and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and giving out of all that He's given you to make people whole. He does the healing, but boy, we can sure be the vessel by which it's given. So in just a moment, as we have our time of invitation and commitment, I want to ask you what you're going to decide concerning Jesus. So anyway, well, I came to church today just to worship. I didn't plan on making any decisions. When have you ever been to church and had zero decisions? Now, you may not see any coming to the altar. You may not have anybody say, hey, it was a decision I made today. But there is not a soul who comes into the presence of God in a worship where Jesus is exalted, where decisions are made by every soul. Because we're either going to say yes, or it's going to be some form of no. See, there is no neutrality. So what's your decision concerning it? When you begin to look and see that Jesus teaches, Jesus preaches, Jesus touches lives, that's what He wants you and me to do, learning to be Christian. And not just a Christian, Christian. So the world goes, that's what a Christian is supposed to look like. I read an article a number of years ago between a Christian expert and a Muslim expert. And I was astounded at what was revealed in the article. And I haven't forgotten the essence of this after having read it. Here's what the Muslim experts said. We don't plan to be Christians, because that's not our belief system. But we have high regard and respect for those who say they're Christians, watch this, who live it. And you know the world can tell the difference. The world doesn't have to have a t-shirt. They don't need a label. They don't have to look and see, what badge are you wearing? Because if we're learning to be Christian, what they will see in you and me is Jesus. So we have our time of invitation and commitment. God having spoken to your heart through the conviction of the Holy Spirit, what is it that He's speaking to you? There's something where He's looking for you to say yes, or which you will choose. No. May it be yes. May you choose learning to be Christian. Father, thank you for each of these who hear. Thank you.